So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katrin Danerlöv, and I'm a national contact point for the 7th Framework Program. I'm working at VINNOVA. And on behalf of VINNOVA and our host today, the Institute for Surface Chemistry, YKI, I would like to wish you all very welcome to this information seminar about nanosciences, nanotechnologies, materials, and new production technologies, NMP, in the 7th Framework Program. And in particular, I would also like to welcome our web viewers to this seminar. Before we start the actual program, I would like to say a couple of words about VINNOVA. And as some of you already know, VINNOVA is the Swedish governmental agency for innovation systems. And VINNOVA's task is to promote sustainable growth in Sweden by funding needs-driven research. And VINNOVA invests annually around 220 million euro in new and ongoing projects. And an important part of VINNOVA's activities consists of increasing the cooperation between different actors in the innovation system, between companies, universities, research institutes, and other organizations. However, except for being a national funding body, VINNOVA has also the national responsibility for providing advice and information about the 7th Framework Program. So at VINNOVA, there are around 10 people working as so-called national contact points, or NCPs, where I am one of those. And the NCPs can provide information about FP7. We arrange courses and seminars, such as the Information Day today. And we are as well strongly involved in policy issues, and we are actively following the development and the content of the framework program. And in particular also the upcoming framework program that is not to be called FP8, but Horizon 2020. And I shall as well mention that VINNOVA has an office in Brussels. And I can also comment that about the national contact points, that each area in FP7 has at least 2 persons working within the area, and where you find one of these persons at VINNOVA. So if we talk about the program of today, or an NMP, I am the primary and national contact point. And in the audience we as well have Anders Marén from VINNOVA. And this slide is just to show a very simple picture on FP7 for those of you that might not be familiar with the FP7 structure. And this is a simple picture. FP7 consists mainly of these 4 parts, where we have cooperation consisting of 10 thematic areas. And here is where we find the NMP program that we will talk about today. Ideas, on the other hand, focus on quite fundamental research. And here we have, for example, the prestigious ERC grants that some of you might have heard of. People, on the other hand, is perhaps more known as Marie Curie. And here there is a strong focus on researchers' mobility as well as career development. And then we have as well capacities, which mainly focus on building up research capacity in Europe. And here we find, for example, initiatives for strengthening the innovation capacity of SMEs. However, regarding cooperation, what you need to remember is that cooperation addresses collaborative projects. And you need to involve researchers from different nations as well as different sectors. And for NMP in particular, there's a very strong emphasis on a high industry participation. but that you will hear more about later on. I would also like to take the opportunity to highlight two support offices, or FP7 support offices, that VINNOVA is co-sponsoring. And the first one here is the EU support office, which is run by Sweden Bio. And this office has a specific focus on life science companies. And then we have the second office, which is the EU SME office, run by the RISE Institutes. And I'm aware that there are several in the audience here that work at this office. We have Kenneth Johansson from Inventia. We have Per Lindqvist from SP, for example. There are also a lot of other actors in the system that can provide help regarding FP7. At the universities, there are a number of grants offices. There are also other actors in the systems like Manufacture SE, which is run by Sfirea IVF. And Inventia has also a support office, mainly with a focus on the forest sector. And I would also like to mention that VINNOVA has a planning grant, which is mainly for SMEs. And this planning grant, or small medium-sized enterprises, and this planning grant is called SMINT, and it is support for planning, writing, and submitting a proposal to FP7. And I should say that it's a very easy application to fill in. However, my strongest recommendation is that you contact Karin Åse at VINNOVA before you submit the application. And this is really a reminder to all of you to have this in your head, because most of you, if you get involved in an EU project in cooperation, you will have an SME in that consortium. So please keep this in mind and inform the SMEs about this. So back to the actual program and some practical details. The formal part of the program will end with coffee around 3:15. And this is also the time when the webcasting will stop. And shortly after coffee, there will be a possibility to have informal discussions. And during coffee, I will put up a list where you can sign up for a discussion slot if you're interested. But we have a quite tight schedule today. We have 3 speakers. So I would like to encourage you to save your questions to after each presentation. And with this introduction from VINNOVA, I would like to say very welcome to Dr. Johan Vega-Benes, who is a product officer at the European Commission. And Johan Vega-Benes works at the Unit for Materials at Industrial Technologies at the DG for Research and Innovation. And you will tell us more about what's in the call that was launched this summer, or the NMP Work Program 2013.
Okej, good day. För börja med sagt, jag vill inte prata svenska, men om du kör det på engelska så hoppas alla förstår min engelska. So, first of all, thank you for VINNOVA for inviting me. I hope you will find it a useful day for you. I will also be here a little bit, as Christine said, in the afternoon if you have any more specific questions about your future proposals or the course of proposal in general. So, just to start with a few words about NMP in general, what it's about. Then I go briefly through this thing about the call text, the work program. But the work program has a little over 50 topics, so I'm not going to dig into everything. I'll give a little bit of overview. I will give examples of 4 of the topics, not because I think necessarily that you're the most, you never know if you're the most interested person in these ones, but just to show you a little bit on how one could read the call text and things that could are important because many times the people that fail miss quite a few small details that ends up being big issues during the evaluations. So NMP is the 4th of the 16 topics under cooperation, and the overall objective of NMP is to improve the competitiveness of the European industry and to short transformation. So improving the knowledge base, generation new breakthrough knowledge, strengthening the leaderships, and this is similar to many other ones, integrating different technologies. And we also quite rely on what's called the European technology platforms in developing ideas for the future and setting priorities. So some main features of the NMP work program. So as Catherine said, we stimulate strong participation of SMEs. Not all call topics require SME participation, but many do. Promotes multidisciplinary approach, depends a little bit on the call topic. Some cover fairly large part of the value chain, so then by nature also the proposal will be multidisciplinary. In most cases we use a two-stage proposal submission procedure. Exemptions are the PPPs and the CSAs. I will come back to those later on. And we have a budget allocation by call. So if you submit the proposal, for example, under SME, so you do not compete with other people's just submitting to your SME topic, but also all the other ones during the same call. And as most others, we have a yearly updated work program, and this one now in 2013 is the last one under FP7. So the funding schemes, we basically have two types. The collaborative projects, the consortia have many different kinds of participants from different countries with different knowledge and different level of participation. Overall, we want new knowledge, technology, products, or common resources for research in there. And the size, scope, and internal organization of project can vary by very large amount, depending on which type, small, large, SME. In this last one, we also have what's called demonstration. So there's a very high focus on demonstration activities. And we also have the coordination and support action, which is more very limited, quite often very small, both in terms of money and time frame. And normally we only have one of them. Depends a little bit what it is. Sometimes we want to have a workshop organized, a seminar, we want to have a movie made, or we want to have a big survey or something, then it's just one project. And a few words about the recovery plan. This is something that was added on, I think 4 or 5 years ago. So we have 3 PPPs, which is part of the idea of improving the knowledge base in European industry with a focus on factories of the future, which is enabling technology to support human manufacturing across many sectors. Energy efficient buildings. So it's the building or the building concepts or the district concepts to reduce energy. So it can be both material, processes, anything. And green cars. This is mostly on related to battery or battery systems, energy storing systems for mobile and for any kind of vehicle, and also the structure of the car itself, lightweight materials, etc. I will only take one slide about the procedure, mostly because I think this one is important when you think about how to make your proposal, and how you will see most of these things will come back in the guide for applicants, where you have the template, how things look like. But it's important to note that we have 3 evaluation criteria. This is what the experts see when they do the evaluation. So it's important for you to see what they see, or what they have in mind when they see your proposal. So you see I have a couple ones in bold, under S&T as soundness and concept, quality objectives, and progress beyond state of the art, and under impact, contribution at the European level to the expected impacts. These 3 only ones that are evaluated at first stage evaluations. If you have a single stage or a 2-stage proposal, everything counts. So it helps a little bit of don't spend all your money on describing how much money you will spend on the project in the first stage, because they will ignore it anyway. So, to the NMP. This is the last call under FP7, and we have by far the largest budget, over 600 million euros. I think it's almost 200 more the last time. So, enabling industrial technologies. You recognize this name if you have read about Horizon 2020. And also what's called the three CATs, key enabling technologies. In this case, there are 6 of them, or 7 of them. In this case, it's advanced materials, nanotechnologies, and production. And there are many ways of dividing the budget, if you may. So we have cross-cutting activity innovation, which is not necessarily linked to either NMP on their own, can be broader, or it could be issues that are coupled to many other different themes under the cooperation. So it can be environment, transport, etc. are involved. And good amount of money on application-specific innovation. These examples here are related also to what we call societal challenges. I will come back to the raw materials later on. Energy doesn't mean fuel. It means materials or processes to convert a raw material to a fuel, or how to store or convert one energy form for another. Environment and sustainability. This is probably more under how the process is doing, improving how we're doing things in general. Health and safety. We typically have a couple of topics on biomaterials, and especially on the nano topic, there's a lot of things about safety, but in basically all topics, there is something about energy, about sustainability and health and safety also. So overall, there's more money than this, so it's not easy to sort of split the money evenly. And the PPPs this time get almost half the budget. And yeah, the PPPs are a bit different because they are defined to a large extent by these European technology platforms, so the procedure is a bit different than the normal in defining them. In the submitting is more or less the same as normal. So 2/3 of the budget is dedicated to large and SME targeted projects, and this in a sense is this focus on innovation-specific elements is related to our policies, the Innovation Union, Europe 2020. So you will see in many topics, there are upscaling, demonstration, and standardization, and other issues where we urge you to push the research a little bit further. You can't produce something to sell, but basically anything up to that we can do. We also see this last call as a bridge to Horizon 2020. Now, Horizon 2020 is still just an idea, although we're getting quite far ahead. And much of the NMP, in our proposal, you will find under what's called the leadership in enabling industrial technologies. And the idea is still there's to put more focus on demonstrators, higher technology readiness levels, and many other innovation elements. So a lot of focus on innovation, and also links to societal challenges. I'll come back to raw materials a bit later on. So an overview of the last work program. So we have basically 4 or 5 activities, depending on what you call them. I will go through the first 3 a little bit more in the coming slides. Integration. I will give some more slides on raw materials and oceans of tomorrow. This is the first time we are involved in that. And this was more typical for the integration topic. As many of the different teams come together to share money to make sure we can make something bigger out of it. And the oceans of tomorrow are, how are they? They are one about anti-fouling, 2 topics on biosensors, and one about transport applications for wind energy, everything in marine environment. and the recovery package. You see that new production, they only have 2 topics, but then most of the topics end up in the factory of the future. So it's more about, I'll come back to it later on. Energy efficient buildings is either materials or processes to improve how to build, and also one topic on about deep retrofitting of buildings. And the green card this year only has one topic, which is about aging resistant battery materials. So nanosciences. In the topics, you will normally see something that are more application specific, like in this case, 2 topics on sustainable development, one for converting raw materials into something, to fuel. The one on self-assembly I will go through a little bit later on. This one on nanosensors, and there's also normally one on related to biomaterials, biomedicine. In this case, it's related to the problem of resistance of bacteria, eller microbial resistance to antibiotica. And nanosciences in general, they have put over the years a lot of effort on, let's say, horizontal issues. So a lot of things about related to safety. These topics here are more on one general on safety, but more on what is a nanomaterial, how to measure it, and how to make sure it's safe or not, or how to assess the safety or not. And this one is a bit peculiar because then there's a, even though it's a large scale, we also have an upper funding limit, 7 million euros. And you have all these cross-cutting issues that are more not necessarily specific for one application, but ideas or processes that can be used for many different applications. So multi-scale modeling, metrology, methods and standards for the definition of a nanomaterial. And there's one more on outreach activity towards civil society. And I come to my unit. We see things, material as an enabler. So in many cases the call is on a material for a use, or could be there is a application that lacks material that's good enough. So normally it's either or. So you will see a little more different examples. I will take this first one on precursors. I will talk a little bit later on. Normally we only have one topic on biomaterials. This year we have 2, one on advanced therapies and one on rapid prototyping. And this one on the latter one is it's called a coordinated call. So it requires to have another project going on in parallel or very, very much joint with the European one. And there's one on 2 related to energy, or if you're familiar with the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, the SET plan, where we have done a big roadmap trying to define which type of research are needed now to reach goals of the energy industry for the future. So here we have 2 topics, one on wide gap, materials of wide gap semiconductors, and one on durable energy harvesters and storage. So it's not just harvesting. Then we have a couple of structuring actions, which are normally the CSAs, is more networking activities. The first one is on making media material. It has a movie about materials, the importance of materials in Europe. The other one is related to, in the United States, they call it the Materials Genome Initiative. So it's more about materials by design. It's really, from a theoretical level, designing how the material should be to achieve certain properties. But this is also more networking rather than doing the actual research. New production. Okay, so it's in production is tools for monitoring, assessing the process, online monitoring, inline monitoring, etc. And well, as I said, only 2 topics here under P, but 11 more on the factor of the future. And these one of the factor of future specifically, normally, well, most of them are a process for a specific industry. So just taking one related to the raw materials, the integration. Now, raw materials. We have something called the Raw Materials Initiative, which was launched by the DG of Enterprise and Industry like 4 years ago. And they started out with the report on defining what is criticality. From an industrial point of view, which materials are critical. They come up with a list of 14 different materials, groups of materials. And from this point of view, discussion has continued, and we're now developing what's called the European Innovation Partnership on raw materials. So it's a bit wider than just criticality. But in the point of view, we have defined 3 different topics. So in these bigger activities on the criticality, we look at international trade rather than research, collaborations. Then how to improve the materials resource base, is mining or recycling. Or the third one is more on how to improve what we're already doing or finding substitutes for the ones that are critical, for the materials that are defined as critical. So the first one is related to the criticality. And this was defined in a dialogue with Japan, so it's a coordinated call. So 1 product, but in principle, formally, 2 products, one in Europe and one in Japan. Then we have one related to the mining, for example, deep sea mining. And the third one is more related to what do we really mean by criticality, or how good is our information to make the decision whether something is critical or not. So then I will go through 4 different topics. These topics are more for showing you how to read, and how one can read the core topics, rather than telling you apply to these ones that I think some of these could be of interest to you. So I'll take one first from the Nanosciences, self-assembled naturally occurring nanosystems. And under each topic you find different subheadings. The first one is technical scope and content. Normally the first 1 or 2 paragraphs is about defining the context. Why do we have this call? So this we use in the dialogue, for example, with the program committee, since it's not just commission defining something, we also need to defend why we want to do this. Or so the first one is setting the scene. So in this case, the use of natural systems as towards innovative products and using naturally occurring nanostructures. So this is a way of, the objective is to exploit the possibilities of biomass of plant origin to add up added value products. This is the basic idea. And it continues with a few examples. This could be an ensemble of nanoscale, functionalization, smart paper, surfaces, self-healing materials. These are just examples of what could be, doesn't have to be. So what comes next is research should focus on. Now it gets important. Now we're starting to tell you what we expect you to do in the proposals or in the future projects. So in this case, it's development of new nanomaterials or nano intermediates for mastering of the self-assembly, etc., etc., etc. And then I forgot, in the second last line, there is at the mesoscale and further the processing. So mastering the nano and taking it into, starting to work on taking it to production. Not to make final products, because you can't do it under our rules. I'll get back to that later on. Then it says research can also, and this can also means, for sure you can include it if you want to, but you don't get penalized if you don't do it. So we have examples of, but when they say these little bit fussier ones, it's also important to check the impacts, because these kind of things might bump up or come up again in impacts. Then it's important to make sure that you don't exclude anything that sounds a bit soft here, because it can come up quite hard on you under the impacts. So technical scope continues with a couple of examples what these similar responsive materials could be. Light, heat, chemical probes, etc., photoexcitation. This is a big set of examples. You probably can't do anything, or we don't expect you to do everything. Then comes another one. The product should target green processes and validate industrial feasibility. So even though it says before a little bit faster about getting to the product, you should work quite hard on at least progressing beyond just having the understanding. And here it ends with a couple of examples from large volume sectors such as, and such as it just gives again a couple of examples. Composites and surface treatment to niche markets and high value added sectors like, etc., etc. So when it says like, such as, you know that you don't need to do everything, but it gives you an idea. It can be completely different things also. And here comes a couple of things that make people to fail, especially if you take a cold topic and just look at the topic, the title, and you submit something according to the title. Normally you will miss a lot of things inside the cold topic that you need to comply with or at least address. So here it says approaches should include life cycle assessment and risk assessment and address recyclability. So there are many things here we ask you to do that are beyond just mastering the nanoscale. And since this is a non-topic, they set up a lot of activities related to safety. They have this nano-safety cluster, which we expect you to coordinate with, or rather some of its projects. This is a small, so then expected impact. Normally there is a short list, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different items that you should include. Depends a little bit on how it's phrased. In this case, you need to focus, you need to address all these 3 items. So efficient technologies, development green processes, positive contribution to sustainability. So 3 things that the experts will look to when they assess the impact. And cold fish, important, always check it. You will find lots of different important things, deadlines, funding limits, up and down, etc. And also which type of evaluation procedure. Normally people don't miss it, but it's important because if you miss some of these items here, the proposal might become ineligible, and then you put a lot of effort in for nothing. So this is part of the call FP7 NMP 2013 small 7, data publication in July. First deadline in October, then it's 7 o'clock European 11 Brussels time sharp. No 5 past, nothing like this. It's really 5 o'clock. We should close the shop. Indicative budget 82 million. This is for the whole call, not just for this topic. So I think there are. I did a calculation. I think it ended up, since the maximum contribution is 4 million, if everyone falls just a little bit below there, on average, I expect we'll be able to fund 3 proposals per topic. Doesn't mean that we guarantee there will be free funded, because in the very end of evaluations, all proposals under this call will be listed according to the scores, and we count out how much money you want, or you expect to get from us, and we reach 82 million euros, we stop the list. So in principle, one topic could be without any proposals whatsoever. Normally doesn't happen, but since we're not guaranteeing that something will be funded, we normally say up to a certain amount of projects can be funded. So normal eligibility, there are more details. I just highlighted some issues in the cold fish because there are many other details that are important to have a look at. So normal, at least 3 countries under FP7, so it could be European countries or the associated countries. E-contribution up to 4 million. That's basically it. There'll probably be a second stage evaluation then done in April, but those that will pass the first stage will get an invitation letter or information letter that acts as an invitation letter. Now you can submit your second stage and setting a date. And also check the guide for applicants. There you will see information about the template, what you should add, or what you should include in your application, your proposal. Okay, then I take one topic from me, not from me, but from my unit. Developing new precursors, new processing routes and functionalization for carbon fibers. Again, here is the first section, paragraph is setting the scope or the context. And here we put up lots of different applications, etc., etc., etc. The main problem is that the carbon fiber applications risk being restricted because of the being either of high risk, or high costs, or the limited supply. So that's the overall idea. Now I come to the hard part. Research projects should address development of new economically viable precursors. So not just, doesn't need to be completely new, but at least that they are new in the context of your application and they're economically viable. So you need to think about both these things. Proposal should also address one or more. When it says like this, one or more, that usually comes a long list. And then you have to find a way in which things fits best with what you want to do or intend to do. Wow. And so you don't need to do everything all these things. And here again in the bottom you see life cycle assessment as well as environmental safety issues should be addressed. So not just developing these new precursors, but also check them on different kinds of levels. And here it comes to the proof of concepts in terms of product and process that should be delivered within the project. And here you can check this communication 2006/C323/01, which will define what we mean by the pre-commercial, what we mean by commercially usable prototypes and not. So you understand the limits. So you can have something that works, rough and dirty, not ready to be sold. You can do, basically, roughly speaking. Then I have couple of sentences of things that may be addressed. This is suggestions from our side, but you're not going to be penalized for not including them, unless we find something different in the impact. So non-destructive technologies, techniques, and modeling, and standardization, etc. you may include. In a sense, you always may include them, sort of, if it makes sense in what you want to do. And we have something that comes back in many topics. The active participation of industrial partners represents an added value to the activities, and this will be reflected in the evaluation under criteria implementation and impact. So you need to show that under implementation that you have industrial partners, they're active. Can be work package leaders, etc., but they have a crucial role in the product, not just being there if they look nice. And the impact. This is a little bit trickier, but previously years we defined it as the output should be for the benefit of the industrial partners. What output fit or the benefit could be many different things, could be new jobs, could be new knowledge, could be new products that they can sell. So it's not one specific item that need to be included, but somehow they should be considered in your proposals. This is a large scale, meaning above 4 million euros. Now, there's a limit, upper limit, of course, because we have 158 million euros in the calls. You can't apply for more than that, but do you really want to apply such a large project? So, and the impact, here we have one of these things, one or more of the following. Before it was written as and or between all the impacts. Now we just write it in the beginning instead. One or more of the following. So European independence from imported products, improved competitiveness, deployment of material structures, securing in-service performance, what's more? New skills in European workforce. So you don't need to comply with everything, but if you do put everything and doing badly, it's not good for you. So there's a little bit of sense in what you should do in here. And again, cold fish, same kind of information as last time. This was a two-stage, 158 million euros. And there's one point that is important, that the budget is indicative. So it's up to the purview of the boss and my boss to shift the money a little bit between the different calls. So let's say all the proposals that are above threshold, and we only reach 150 million euros. Then 80 million euros that are over can be moved to another call. This is what it means. Normally we don't decrease it. Well, when there's more products and more proposals over the limit, and we need more than 158 million euros, we don't decrease the funding normally. That would be strange. Same thing here, at least 3 countries, Europe, so with 158 million, and I think there are 10 topics. If you just for purpose of calculation assume 8 million per topic. Now, not true, because we saw this one on this one from Nano. There was maximum 7 million. I think it's only one project also. So there are some more things, but if you assume 8 million, then roughly 2 per call, per topic can be funded. Again, this is not a guarantee or something that we say. In principle, you can have a proposal at 4,000,001 euros. This is still large. One thing. When we say small and large, it doesn't mean small consortium, large consortium. It's the scope of the proposal that should be either small or large. So in principle, you can have a proposal under a large topic with only 3 partners. If they have all the capacities, the staff, the machinery, etc., infrastructure to do it, it can be very complicated and very complex, but everything is in-house, it's still okay with only 3 partners. This is a novelty. This is probably as close as you will ever see of a bottom-up call from us. We did something similar last year. There was a CSA related to bringing project results into standardization. Here we are more looking into IPR. Doesn't have to be from FP7 projects, but researcher and SME have an IP, have a patent granted. So the idea is there's a lag between the research and actually getting it into industrial production, or somewhere in between there. And there was also quite common suggestion from you or researchers overall in Europe that there's a missing, if you have a project, you have something that's working, at least in the lab scale, we don't get money to bring it a bit further on. So this is basically the idea of this core topic, although it's limited to materials and material technologies. So this call aims to stimulate and support the use of newly developed and IR-protected materials and material technologies. That's the overall idea, the concept. So the process should involve innovation-oriented research in materials and material technologies, further developing existing IPR-covered results, scaling up to a prototyping or pilot stage. So we don't here tell you which material, which applications, which industry, nothing. It's completely up to you. So, but the consortium should demonstrate ownership or of exclusive rights to use the relevant IPR. The relevant IPR should be in the form of patents granted by the EPO or national patent offices. So this is quite, you have to have a patent at least by the date of closing of the call. And of course, you should demonstrate that the IPR institution is compatible with commercialization, that you have the appropriate knowledge to handle this. You should prove the technical or economic viability. Should be a business plan at the end. One or more of the following ancillary activities may also be included. So you don't have to. If it makes sense in what you propose, please feel free to add them. So it says this list is not exhaustive and it's only given as an example. So market studies, scouting of SMEs, insertion of qualified personnel into SMEs, life cycle assessment, etc. So this is a completely different way of describing call text from we are used to and you are used to see from us. So we're very much interested to see how this will end up. And there's some more things, sound detailed market perspectives, etc. So this is an SME, meaning there's no upper or lower funding limit, but there's a limit on, there's a requirement on how much money will go to SMEs. And again, the expected impacts are in the form of one or more of the following. So realized cases or research results are used by new or existing industries, creation of new businesses, exploitation of results, and growth and jobs. So very open-ended impacts. So there's lots of work for you to figure out if you have something in the drawer that you want to kickstart a little bit further. As I said, this is going to be a new experience for all of us. This is also a two-stage procedure. The budget for the call is 39. If I calculate correctly, if you assume an average of 3 million per proposal, something between 3, maybe 4 proposals per can be funded. And again, since there is no upper limit, you can go higher up in the budget if you see fit or if it's needed. Of course, independent of it's 1 million or 5 million, you still make sure that the resources are used. So you need to show or demonstrate in proposal that our resources are there properly. So since SME, it's 35% contribution to SMEs. This will be checked at the very end, before we sign the grant agreement, since things might change, the partners might change the SME status or not. You might need to change the budget a little bit during negotiations. So this will only be checked at the very end. So instead of taking one of the topics under production, I'm looking at one of the factory of the futures, which is reasonably close by. Manufacturing process for the products made of composites or engineered metallic materials. So, and again, the first couple of paragraphs is about the context. So the market wants to have higher requirements of better performing materials. In many cases, the use of composites or engineered metallic materials is a way to overcome these hurdles. And now this call text is, I'm showing this one because it's the way it's written is a bit different from normally. Then it says research activities should focus on several of the following. And then you have 6 or 7 different ones that a list, so it doesn't mean everything. So, for example, innovative methodologies and technologies for the manufacturing which are capable of producing most, etc., etc. And have systems and devices to monitor and optimize the process. New technologies for joining or assembly of multi-materials components. Characterization and testing techniques to evaluate the performance. Development of product repair technologies. And recycling technologies and rules that guarantee a minimal amount of environmental footprint. So there are, let's go back. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that max. You can add more things if you want to. But of these, you should cover. There's no limit saying you need to be more than 3, you need to be more than 5, but it's as much as possible. But then also look at the impact later on. They get a little more clear maybe. An additional requirement here is the screening of standards. And standardization, pre-noted research should be considered. And again, proof of concept should be delivered before the end of the project. And here we again have one of these active participation of industrial partners. So the demonstration are expected to cover demonstration activities. So here we tell you, you need to include demonstration activities. We don't tell you how much, but they need to be included. This is a small, so up to 4 million euros. And here we cover the impact, so you need to cover all 3 of those. Higher utilization of advanced materials, decrease in raw materials energy consumption, reduction of waste and emissions. And there are a couple of indicators, so you need to, these percentages have to be related to state of the art available in industry, not what's in your lab scale thing, but really out in this industry. So, for example, look at the last point here: the reduction of waste and emissions during the processing, manufacturing, and/or dismantling phases. So it means that if you just do everything effectively, you might be able to get away with it without doing recycling activities also. But it might be easier to do both things. But one is not excluding the other. That's what I want to say. So it doesn't, even though it says reduction of waste and emissions, you do not have to include recycling. But maybe the recycling is a better way to doing it. But it's up to you. And again, it's always up to you in the proposal to make it believable, make it understandable. Also remember that the experts are not always experts on your specialty. Since we have all these things on many different things that should be covered, some are better than, for example, standardization, than on composites. Maybe the person who's good on composite and standardization might be, but you need to realize that there are many different types of persons sitting in the expert panel looking at the proposals. So have this in mind, and things that are too clear to you might be completely foggy for. So you need to present things in a good manner. It's more, I guess, it's more complicated in the first stage. We only have 10 pages, but unless in the first stage you have less criteria to fulfill. Was that for me or someone else? No. Again, the cold fish. Here I saw some errors. This is not the there is no second stage here. This is only a single stage procedure. And again, since the PPPs contain both large, small, SME and demonstration activities, it's difficult to calculate, give an estimate how many proposals actually be funded. So your guess is as good as mine in this case. For all the PPPs, we use single stage procedure. So it's the full-blown proposal in one go. The deadline is wrong, sorry. The deadline, I think, is in December. For 3 or 4 December rather than this one, so it's wrong. So please I might have made some other mistakes, so please check the code fish, because the code fish is the legal document. Yeah, and since the factory future, the PPP is a bit different, there might be some more additional details in the guide for applicants that you need to have a look at. There's lots of information you need to digest, but these small things might turn out in your not favor if you do it wrongly. So some closing off with some recommendations. Try to choose the right instrument. Well, the way we're doing it is quite top-down, so you don't really have much choice of choosing the instrument. But then we keep in mind what is the instrument for the topic you want to apply to. Of course, is your objective open in the call? If you just search by your favorite keywords, you might miss something that are more open-ended than you expect. That's good. I just had a look here on just look in the work program. In the pages 3 to 5, you have all the titles. So at least if you have a quick scan, you have a good idea of what's going on in the call. So in shared critical model, it's, as I said, even for a large, it might be sufficient with 3 partners. So looking at the complementarity, if you only have the first stage, you don't need to worry about the actual consortium, but since you need the consortium also for writing the proposal, it's not bad to have a critical mass already from the beginning. Now, we don't really assess the finances or the actual amount unless it's the threshold. Not in the first stage or in the second stage. It's more the resources, how much time you put into it, and if you have all the equipment, etc., and the infrastructure to do the research. And depending a little bit on the call topic, it's important to include different supporting modules, training, technology transfer, spin-offs, IPR, ethics, etc. But that entirely depends on the call you're proposing to, or the topic. Develop an ambitious systematic plan of activities. Now, if you do first stage, it's good to have this idea already at the beginning, but you don't look so much at the actual work plan in the first stage. But if you do a second stage or one stage, how things keep together, because sometimes, quite often, you see the expert commenting, this seems to be 5 different projects going on at the same time without any connection. So how things are put together are important, and clear deliverables of milestones. Also, it's easier for you in the end when you actually start it. If you have something that's clear enough and understandable and measurable, at least for the deliverables, it's easier for yourself to follow up what's going on, and also easier for the experts to see if they have thought through what you actually want to get out for the project. Pragmatic management. Well, if you have 3 partners, you don't need to have three steering committees, one management board, or etc. etc. It's a little bit of sensibility in this issue. If you have 20 partners, it would make sense to have a little bit complicated, because it's going to be difficult to get everyone at the same table all the time. So, yeah, not because I have projects with partners on 3 different continents, and they're managed, but it's tough. So you need to think about how to do this more than both the day-to-day basis and the more overall steering of the project. Then the last call, the official documents you find on this website, the work program, the call fish, and the guide for applicants. All of them contain important information. I think the call fish and work program are the more crucial ones, but there are many different things. Additional items you need to find in the guide for applicants. Sometimes, not always, when we get questions about the call topics, we publish Q&As. This you'll find in this FAQ section. Just search for the first couple of numbers in the topic you're interested. Then if there is something, you will find it there. And if you want more information about Horizon 2020, you can have a look at the site also. Thank you. How was I?
Thank you very much, Dr. John Vega-Benes. This was like 130 pages in 40 minutes. So it's a lot of details to have in mind. So I guess we have a lot of questions now from the audience. And we will need to use this mic, so please.
Lars Avelan, IVF. What will your crystal ball or knowledge say about after 2013, after December, what will happen?
Now, currently we're discussing the Horizon 2020. We have what's called a partial general agreement on the technical side of Horizon 2020. It means that the general idea is there, but now what's missing is first of all, it's the money and the rules of participation. So, well, we can't, in the commission works that we can't make a call if we don't have any money. So since the money is from the member states, we can't give money we don't have. So that's the first thing, which I think there will be discussion now in October. And the rules of participation. So one of the ways is to have, from our side, is to have one reimbursement rate, one indirect cost method, many things that we think that will make it easier or less prone to errors, both in the reporting and otherwise. But this is just an idea. So now the ball is in the hands of the Council and the Parliament. Discussion ongoing, but for sure we will not make a call again before we have the money. That's what's called the multi-annual financial framework, the MFF. Did that answer the question, or? Sorry.
Just checking that the pragmatic, easy answer is understood correctly. Does this mean that your guess is that it will be a gap in calls from now, and how long do you think that gap will be?
Good guess. No, it's the actual preparation of the call topics will start this year already. We have started already. So the ideas what to put in there is up, and I think we'll see some first ideas pretty soon, I guess. So we're not stopping the work progress, but legally we can't start funding anything before 1st of January 2014. But as it is now, everyone is positive, and so hopefully everything is settled by mid next year, so we can have in practice we can have a call a little bit later than normal, but it's a couple of months, I don't know, half a year. It's not going to be drastic. As it looks now, it's not going to be a drastic delay.
But I've heard that some other areas within FP7, they're planning for some conferences in late 2013. And I guess that might be an opportunity for presenting draft work programs, or...
I haven't heard about any.
I know,
but yeah,
in particular in space,
okay,
or the thematic area space, they're considering to have some conferences in late 2013. So I wouldn't be surprised if you will see something about the content for the work program for 2014 already in the autumn. Next year, but you never know.
No, because from a legal point of view, because we're now also discussing which instruments to use, not just the call for proposals like we do, but there's been lots of talking about prices, etc. So there might come up other ways of funding research.
Do we have more questions in the audience?
I will be here in the afternoon also if you want to, later on, if you have some more technical questions about the call topics that you're interested in replying to.
So I can probably stick in with one question. I mean, you're really involved in the evaluation or monitoring the evaluation process. So can you give any hints to us? I mean, what are the most common misunderstandings out there about the evaluation process? Do you have any? No, I guess I have one. Some people think it is. I mean, you, the project officers.
No, sorry, no.
Whatever.
It's quite a big procedure doing the evaluations. So right after we have done the actual publication, I and my fellow POs start looking for experts to do the evaluation. So it's not us I think it was in FP3, FP4, it was the actual POs to do the evaluations, but since the last 2-3 framing programs, we completely rely on external experts. So we have a database for this. You can find it on the participant portal. There you can, if you're not applying, you can register yourself as an expert to do evaluations. It's, for the people that come, I say it's a good experience to get a better feeling for how the evaluations actually happen. And normally it's just to say how it, so we select the experts. We have a couple of selection criteria. Normally it's, and when it comes to evaluation, there is 1 or 2 weeks remote phase where they sit at home or at work and read the proposals. They've signed non-disclosure agreements beforehand to read all the signed proposals, make comments, and from the comments make scores. And then, depending on if it's a remote, first stage, we do consensus meetings by telephone or by email. And if it's a single stage or second stage, there is a consensus phase here in Brussels, not here, but in Brussels, where they meet for up to 1 week, talking to each other, agreeing on the comments, and from that setting the scores. We have you'll find in the guide for applicants, there's a table called interpretation of scores or something like this. Sort of good is 3, excellent is 5, there's some other things in between. So when you get the ESR, the evaluation summary report, you get some comments and they get the score. And hopefully the scores should be obvious from the comments. That's basically how it's done.
I guess it's so as well that we here in the Nordic countries, we're not that good in signing up as experts.
Yes, there is a bit of a... Yeah, no, I agree. There's could be more Nordic participation. No, because we have also restrictions. You can't put 15 Germans in one panel. We have to cover all. We are obliged to cover all, not all countries, but as well, only have one from each country, unless we need to have lots of experts.
So signing up for an expert role is sort of the best way to understand how to succeed with your FP7 proposal. Is that right?
Yes. So in principle, even though if you're applying for, say, one of my panels, you could, in principle, act as an evaluator in a completely different setting also. So, yeah.
So do we have more questions from the audience? Please feel free to ask whatever you like now. And in particular, I know that there is a lack of women as evaluators, in particular in the Nordic countries, I've heard.
No, I haven't had that problem actually, but yes, maybe. When I search for all the countries, I find more women than men, but I don't know, maybe it's my ways of searching, I don't know.
Well, I guess
but please register. Most people like it. It can be, sometimes can be quite intense, but it's a good way both to see how it works, get to meet completely different people that you would never meet normally. Actually, because just the idea of trying to get since in so many calls we have so many different things that you need to consider, we also need experts to cover all these issues. So you will find people that are completely outside your normal circles. So it's quite...
Okay, thank you. No more questions? We continue to the next speaker. I would like to introduce Dr. Marie Sjöberg, who is currently section manager at the Materials and Coating section at YKI. And she will share her experiences from writing and setting up EU applications. And in this particular case, she will talk about experiences from EU-funded projects, and in particular the NMP project, Wood Life.
All right. So thank you, Katrin, for inviting me. So as Katrin said, I'm here to share some experiences from setting up a project or a proposal to start with. I'm now coordinating a project called Wood Life. It deals with the improved properties of wood products using functional nanoparticles and clear coatings and adhesives. And setting up this was way back in 2009, so it's a couple of years ago now. We are about 2 years into the project as it is right now. It's a collaborative project, small and medium scale focused research project, budget of 3.4 million euro in total, so part of that is from EU then. So I will not go through all technical details here. I'm more focused on some information of how we were thinking setting up this proposal. But just briefly then, I can explain that Wood Life deals with 2 different tracks. They both aim to use more wood products and to extend the service life of wood products. The first track is to develop new UV protection systems for clear coatings on wood. Normally, if you have an organic UV absorber, it degrades with time, and that limits the service life of these systems. So what we have been doing is to develop UV absorbing nanoparticles, inorganic metal oxide nanoparticles for these systems. The other track is to improve the mechanical properties of water-based wood adhesives, so thermoplastic wood adhesives using nanoparticles such as nanoclays and nanosilica. So one of the most important things, of course, is the consortium. And here we were quite lucky to start this in an excellent center, the EcoBuild Center at FP7. So we had some partners that we were working with already, like AkzoNobel, SP, YKI. We had some initial results that were very promising, so we decided to go for this call then. And I should say also that the call, or the topic in this call, was quite general. You can see here it's a molecular factory, manufacturing objects with predictable and controllable properties. So it doesn't say anything about wood or coatings in this topic. But we thought that our concept was, was well in line with what was said in this topic anyway. So the consortium is 11 different partners, 6 industrial partners and 5 RTD partners. And the idea here was to cover all the different roles we needed, of course, in the project. So all the way from making the nanoparticles, so we have Energenics, which is a SME from UK. We have Byk, a German company, Laviosa in Italy making nanoclays, and also RTDs like YKI and Series making different types of nanoparticles. EKA in Sweden making colloidal silica. So we had a good different partners taking different roles in the project. Also, the end use here was covered with AkzoNobel wood finishes in Germany and Casco adhesives in Sweden. SP, PRA doing testing, and then end formulation work, and Polymat, which is a university in Spain, developing hybrid binders for the project. So, well, my recommendation, to find partners that complement each other, not duplicate competencies, but to have different roles, of course, and if you can avoid competitors, I mean, that will make it more complicated. So it's easier to have working with companies in the value chain. One of the important parts of the proposal is the impact part, of course. In our case, we were focusing on using wood and why it is so important to use wood. And with the new products we are developing, we are then explaining that with the improved properties of coated and glued wood products, we can use more wood products. And one impact here is, of course, the environmental impact, the climate change, the climate effect. Using wood as a carbon sink is, of course, a positive effect. We also had a good example, I think, from this is from AkzoNobel in Germany, and they compared the costs for 10-year maintenance costs and materials costs for a wood window area. This is of a huge building called Campion in Germany. So they need a lot of clear coatings for these wood window frames. Comparing a non-protected or one that is using then conventional organic UV stabilizers, you have a high maintenance costs because it's not very durable. Materials costs is lower. In case B, where we have the type of systems we will develop, we expect then to have a much lower maintenance cost. On the other hand, we can have a bit higher materials cost and still save a lot of money. So I thought this was a good example to show very concrete the effect, the impact of the systems that we are developing. Okay, I was also asked to copy some of the text from the evaluation report just to show you some examples of type of comments you can get. As already mentioned, there are 3 parts. So it's a scientific and technological part. Second part is implementation and management, and the third part is impact. So of course it's important to have all these 3 parts as good as possible, and not just the first one here. I mean, as a researcher, it's easy to make this very, very good and then not put that much time on impact and implementation. So comments we got here was that we were covering challenges like agglomeration effects, etc. Methods were also beyond current state of the art. In the end there we got a comment that we could complement it by also modeling studies. So that was a suggestion from the evaluators. We did think about that and consider that, but we realized eventually that it wasn't possible to include that in the project, so we decided not to include it in the project and argued for why it was beyond the scope of the project. So it was a suggestion, but we reasoned about that in the final project plan. Second part then, implementation and management. Here we got comments about, well, mostly about the consortium then, that it was a well-balanced consortium. However, we got a comment that a minor weakness is that it's mostly dominated by applied research centers and industrial partners, and that there is only one partner from academia. So we had only one university in this consortia. that was a minor weakness, but yeah, not a big one. The third one, impact. Also comments about value-added products, increasing the lifetime of the wooden products, and the effect on environment. Not that much to say about that. We also got some other general remarks. For example, we had set up a management structure with both the General Assembly and as the highest level of decision making, and the management board for the operative management. But the evaluators told us that this is too much management structures. There's no need for a parallel structure like this, since it's a relatively small consortium. So this is not a large project, it's small, medium-sized. So they suggested just to have a management board, simple management board structure. So we changed that in the final structure. Also, they wanted to have more extensive analysis of the IP landscape, and that we have included in the literature surveys and patent surveys that we have been doing. All right, some experience then from what I think worked out well here during the application process and later on when the project is running. We worked as a team, both people at YKI with different expertise, complementing each other. I think that was very important. But also, of course, the different competencies from the different partners. So it was a very good team, but one person needed to be in charge of the final text to make it cohesive and to make it easy to read and understandable. So I think it's important that there's one person editing the text and making it cohesive. As I said earlier, also it was important to have these initial results from FP7 EcoBuild Institute Excellence Center. There we could give some indications that this was a promising system, and also we could take the start with some suitable partners from there. I thought it was good to have a two-stage process, application process. At the first stage, you are only expected to write about 10 pages. Of course, you need to have the consortium, you need to have a very good focused idea and a sort of a plan of the project, but you don't need to write like 70, 80 pages, and you can save a lot of time. If the evaluators are not convinced about your project idea, it's better to write 10 pages and then put your time somewhere else. Because if you come to the second stage, at least in our case, it was a 37% success rate. So that's, I mean, then you can put some time on that. I think that's, it's a good way to do it. During the project so far, well, I think it was good that we had a focused project idea, not too many different tracks. We have also put project leaders in charge of work package leaders in charge of their work packages, and that is also very useful, helpful. And also when starting the project, we realized that the project plan was quite detailed, very useful when you start the work. So that was also something that worked out fine. Problems and challenges. Well, it's a long process. It's a very long time. We started, the first application deadline was in February 2009, and we got a start date 1st of June 2010. So it's almost 2.5 years, and that's a long time. So, of course, if it's a two-stage process, it also takes longer time than if it's a one-stage process. It can be problematic, especially for SMEs, I think. We had one partner, for example, that changed during this time. So now we solved that, but it is a long time for an SME to wait 1.5 years to get a project going. Then, yeah, I mentioned that already. I mean, think about the consortium as early as possible when you have the concept ready, and bring in complementing expertise and roles, and companies in the value chain if it's possible. Finally, some recommendations that I think is useful. When starting with a project idea, I think it's useful to think about these three things then: need, idea, and technology. To start with the need. What is the need? Who has this problem, and how big is it? It's often defined in the impact part what type of need that that they are looking for. But in our case, it wasn't that much defined in the topic, so we were defining that for the project. When we know the need, then we can start thinking about the idea then. What type of concept will be used to solve this problem? And when that is clear, you could go one step further to technologies. Which type of technologies do you need then to solve, to fix this using this concept? And at that stage, you also know what type of roles and what type of partners you need in the project. So I think it's useful to think about the need and the concept before you start bringing in the whole consortium. And yeah, of course, there are three parts in the application: scientific and technical quality, implementation, impact, and they all need to be excellent. So it's not just enough to put the first one excellent. You have to put a lot of time on number 2 and 3 as well. Also, I thought it was useful to have a very focused project idea and not to add too many different parts. It's easy to you want to bring in a lot of things that you think is useful, or you think is interesting, or things that you would like to do. But if it doesn't fit the objective of the project, I think it's much better to leave it out and to prioritize your ideas. All right. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Marie. Do we have questions for the audience, from the audience?
Monica, KTH. Can you say something about the total budget? Did you get like 4 million euros as a small project, or?
We got, well, the total budget is 3.4 million euro. I don't remember now the maximum EU contribution, but it was a bit below that, so we were not at the maximum level.
Okay. But can you say something of how much contribution you got from the industrial partners?
Well, the industrial partners, they get, what do you mean, how much of the budget is used by the industrial partners?
Or the total budget?
The total budget.
Oh.
I cannot say exactly. I mean, the RTT partners has a bigger budget. They are 5 compared to 6 industrial partners, but yeah, I cannot say exactly. It's probably something like 40-30% at least. So they have a quite substantial budget anyway, but the RTD partners, they do have a higher budget.
Thank you.
Just one question about the confidentiality agreement of the consortium. Before to start, you had also to make sure that all the consortium have been signing confidentiality agreement to decide, okay, where are going to go the result and who is going to take the patent and so on. Mm-hmm. How did you solve this issue? Was it painful? Was it?
I don't think it was very painful. I think it's not having competitors. Direct competitors in the consortium helps, because then, well, it's more natural who should take the patent in different parts, And also there is quite a lot of standard text on the consortium agreement that can be used. So I think it was not very difficult in this case. But of course it depends on what kind of consortium you have, I would say.
More questions from the audience? Marie, if you need to give us one advice on how to succeed with an FP7 application, what is that sort of word or what do you need to think about?
Yeah, well, keep it simple, I would say. I mean, it's so easy to bring in a lot of things and to describe things very complicated. I mean, you want to show that you know this and that you are the best in this area, but I would say it's better to keep it clear and simple and understandable for the evaluators. And it's not, well, it could be that they are not experts in this area, so it's better for them to understand what you mean than to show off and use a lot of difficult language. So keep it easy to read, I would say.
So a couple of comments about sort of, is it worth it applying for money from the EU? I mean, what are the advantages really? Do you have spin-offs?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we can see a lot of different things happening around this project and another one that we have started. So it's definitely worth it. It takes a lot of time to write it, but I think, especially with a two-stage application procedure, it's not that much work to put together the first one. So it's definitely worth it, and also to have a better, very close relationship with industrial partners is very important for us. So it's very useful.
Thank you very much, Marie. Now it's time for the last speaker for the day. Now it's time for Ulf Holmgren from VINNOVA to talk about experiences from their work in the NMP program committee. And Ulf Holmgren, you seem to have a lot of titles, but the first one is Director and Head of Manufacturing and Working Life Division, but you're also Chief Strategy Officer at VINNOVA, and as well the Swedish expert in the NMP program committee.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's impressive. Well, you will tell us a little bit about how Sweden is performing in the NMP program, as well what you're really doing in the program committee. So please.
Okay, I'll try.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, and Katrina has already told you maybe that I've been involved in the framework program for a long time. I started with the 4th framework program back in the 80s, so I've been traveling to Brussels a number of times. I don't think that that made me an expert on NMP, but I have some experience and some thoughts maybe to share with you anyway. So, is the framework program important? That's the first question you need to. I will start on a higher level and slide down to success rate and things like that. Of course, it's important because it's the largest funding scheme, so we can't ignore it actually. Even if some people say it's very complicated. 2-stage, 1-stage, you have to have partners all over Europe, but you can't ignore it. It's there, and it's increasing actually. I think that you need to look at this. Some of the previous speaker has touched on it, and it is that the aim with the framework, you need to have that in your head when you write an application. You don't an application because you want to do something. You also need to address the overall objectives, I think, and to understand why we have the framework at all. I said it's increasing. It is increasing. If you look at Sweden, for instance, and I don't mean the money that is directly to the university, the money who is given in competition from agencies and research councils. It's now the second largest financer in Sweden, so it is important. And of course, for me as a representative in going to Brussels, I would like to see that Sweden is successful, and I'll show you we are quite successful. How are we doing? That could be an interesting thing to know. This is the absolutely latest figures. It is from summarized the contract that is ready and signed. So there is a lot of more in the pipe because someone said it took almost a year from you submit it until you have a contract and can start. But this is the summarize from project that has been started and have already done the negotiation and have a contract. And of course, it's difficult to understand, is this good or bad? We receive, I would say, because we are quite good. You are quite good. We receive around 3% and more of the budget that the Commission actually finance. And you should think about that. Sweden is a small country. If you only put together the member country, the 27, and we have another 13 countries that have special agreements and are on waiting list to be a member. Sweden is about 1.5 in inhabitants, 1.5%. So we bring in a lot of money. We pay to the union around 2%, I think. So we bring back twice as much as we actually pay in research, and so I think it's quite good. We are a small country, and here you can also see, because we are talking about NMP. NMP is the fourth in success, bringing back money. So and of course this is the situation in June. So we will see what happens in the end. How is we performing in NMP? Well, you saw it was 3.9%, and here we are still around here. It's the 8th place, and if you look at the countries in front of us, of course, Germany is quite substantial bigger, and that would be very strange if we could compete with them. But we still are quite good, I would say. Switzerland is also a small country and are very successful. But this is also from the absolutely newest figures that we have. But there is a but. Of course, there is always a but. And John already mentioned the PPPs. And the PPPs was introduced when the recession started. It was the Commission's response to the recession, you could say. And they wanted something an instrument that could help the industry, support the industry with putting in more money on more industry-oriented research, short-term, a little bit more support to the industry. And this was not very good for the Swedish participants, and you can always wonder why. Previously, we were about 4%, 4.5%, and suddenly after this PPPs was introduced, we went down to last year 3.6% of the budget. or successful, the level of successfulness, or you could say. If you look at it, this is only an example, and this is, I'm not mentioning this because it's more like I will, in the end, give you advice, actually, and this is, I would say, an opportunity, really, because when you look at if you sum all the calls, 10, 11, 12, in the factory of the future, you can see that Sweden ends up with only 2.8 of the budget. And you remember that we'll have an average of the whole call around 3.9. So this is actually lowering our average performance. And the question is why? Why is it? And I'll try to figure it out last summer, actually. And if you look at, there is one major problem with this, because we could live with a low return of investment, you could say. But there is one problem. If you look at the red, when the red is higher than the blue, that means that we have a success rate that is poor. Because if it would be, if the blue, which is the one that is supposed to be financed, is lower than the part of what we apply, it means we have a smaller portion that will be financed. We have a low success rate, and this is a problem. If I add the success rate, this is only for, I think, 2 applications, so ignore it. But otherwise, you can see that Sweden is here and is lower than most, anyway, lower than most member countries. And this is a problem. This has been a little bit changed the last year, 2012, and I see a trend that it's going up. My guess is that because if you look at what kind of applicants or what kind of participants that comes from Sweden, the major part is from university. Most of them. If you look at the ratio between university, institute, large and small company, public sector. Most of we and I would say UK have the similar profile when who is participating. And Factory of the Future is very industry oriented. So if we, you understand that will be a mismatch. The university is good at research, and we have a large portion of a university participating. And their best, they are not the best, what they are best at describing is the scientific level. You mentioned it, that don't forget the other 3 parts, the impact part. So what I did last year, I took out all the score from the evaluation of all projects with Swedish participants. And I added them together and took an average. And what I could see, this is not scientific validated, but it gave me an indication. And the average score of impact was lower than the others. So one of my recommendations for you, if you are going to apply, don't forget to write very carefully why, the impact of the project. That's one of my major, or my findings that I've seen that could be the difference between success and failure. Now I'll change a bit. Can we, and this very simple picture is stolen from the Commission actually, and but I didn't think that it was complicated enough, so I added a few. But I would like to give you a quick view of how can you influence the calls. Where is the work program actually produced? How is it produced, and who is actually who can influence it? So if we start on the far end, of course the Commission use a lot of foresights, roadmaps, but what is very important is the ETPs, European Technology Platforms. And this is a small square or small, but it's a number of platforms that actually have SRIs, which is strategic research agendas, which they, of course, gives to the Commission. And so if you are part or involved in SRAs, you have a little bit bigger chance to influence what is written in the SRAs, in the technology platform and then in the SRA, which goes into the Commission. And of course, the Commission, if they find something that is in line with what they want the frame or next call to be, they of course use this information. So that is one way. The other way, which is added since 2009, is this PPP, energy efficient building, factory of the future, and green car. They also have advisory groups, and they write SRAs. And these SRAs, sometimes when the Commission don't hear, we say that they probably write the part of the call and they give it to the Commission who publish it. So they have a huge influence. And if you are involved here, of course you influence it. So that's two ways. Then of course there is an advisory group that the Commission by themselves has selected. So we cannot influence that very much. You can't ask to be included in that, I'm afraid. We can always try, but that's difficult. So these parts, there are a number of places where you actually can influence what is coming in the work program. Once the Commission, because the Commission has the task, and it's written in the I lost it. Well, they have the task to write proposals, the proposal for the work program. That's their job. Once they've done that, it goes to the program committee. That's where I and another Swede. We are two persons. I'm the expert, and one person, Mikael Gröning from Ministry of Enterprise, Energy and Communication, is the delegate. So this work program is have representation from all the member country and the other 13 with special agreement. So the work program has to pass our eyes, and we can say, no, we don't like it, we want to change it. So we feed it back. And this is actually a process which starts December somewhere. We get a very, very thin draft of the ideas. It goes to the program committee, and we can give the Commission feedback, we could say. And this goes on maybe 4 or 5 times. So in the end, in May somewhere, we we have agreed on what the work program. And the work program go for inter-service consultation and things like that, and then are published. And so this is, of course, one way of have influence on the work program. But if you want new ideas, I would say it should come from here, because we don't introduce here. Our job is not to write the work program. It's more to help the Commission to make it a little bit better, maybe. And to add maybe one or two things that we see they might have missed or something like that. There are also some other groups that feed in different things, but this is the most important part, where they get their inspiration, you could say. And this is an important part where we actually finalize the work program in the end. So that's important to know how it's done. What is very nice is that we can say no. There are special rules. If we say no too many times, they can go to the council and have it back door inside. But we have never done that. And I've been since in mid-80s, so usually this works very well. Of course, a lot of discussions. So the responsibility of the program committee, or for me as a member of the program committee representing Sweden, because then I represent Sweden, it is to contribute to develop next work program. Of course, also to put forward Swedish positions. We have been speaking a lot of wood, for instance, because not every member country in Europe, wood is the highest priority. So we try to get it in a lot of times. A number of the other member states get bored with us sometimes, but that's life. Of course, you need to be a bit street smart, because if every country comes with their shopping list, it will be a complete disaster. You need to have half your hat is Swedish, but half needs to be, we are going to develop a work program together. How do we do it the best way? Because there are people waiting outside that for this work program. So you can't be too Swedish, but of course, when we are there, we are Swedish, because it's Sweden in front of us. The mandate for this program committee is, as I said, suggest areas, additions, changes to the work program, decide on the content. They need a consensus decision from us, that we actually agree on it. But also decide on strategies for the program. Sometimes John mentioned that you can get a long list, the evaluation. You get a long list, and you can sometime, it has actually happened that in one area the project was too poor. They didn't manage to consume all the budget. And then is the question, where are we going to put the additional money or the supplement money that was left over? And this is a more strategic decision, because are we going to put it on the large, the small? Are we going to put them on SAA? Because they have a long list of projects in ranking order. And somewhere the line goes where the budget is. And we still have a number that passed all thresholds, all criteria are fundable. But we don't have the budget. So that's kind of discussion we have. One thing that we never know, and now I kill one of the stories that circulating, I heard it so many times. And I also experienced it, because as a member of the program committee, sometimes people call me and said, can you talk, our suggestion, our proposal is just below the line. Can you put it higher up by pushing it in the program committee? They believe, and they always have a story. Italy always do it. They make it run up. Stories like that. And I can only speak for NMP because we don't do it the same way in all programs. But in NMP, we never change the order from the external evaluation. Never. We don't put one ahead of the other. Never. We go on the external evaluators list, always. I can't remember. I know there was something about one of the projects that was legally a problem, then it was out. And that was actually, but that is many years ago. Otherwise, we never change it. You can't argue. I can't, if it's a Swedish, typically Swedish project or a project with a lot of Swedish participants, I can't argue it up over the line. Never. So that, and I heard it so many times. We also have one more thing, and that is to approve the selected project for financing. Once the evaluation is done, the Commission presents the list for us, and they need our approval to go finance them. Below a certain level, they don't. They only inform us. But that has never been a problem. But we can always, so we get in the program committee, the Commission actually puts all the results available for us to look at. But otherwise, we can sometimes, John also told us about that we have different instruments. We can discuss what kind of instrument for what topic, and that is a part of this, the previous slide where we change things. I will also say one more thing, and it's not because we have a distinguished guest. In all my years that I've been working with the Commission, I think they are very hardworking and they are very clever. And I don't know anywhere else where the evaluation processes is as good. This doesn't mean that it can't be improved, but they are still I think they are very committed people in the Commission. I have been very lucky meeting a lot of very good people, and they usually are very, very helpful also. I didn't know if I should put this in. This is from a presentation in-house in VINNOVA, because we are not so many traveling to Brussels, and sometimes what are you doing in Brussels? But since the latest writing in the newspaper, I put it in. I let it be, rather. This is not what it is. It's more like this. This is a very old picture. It's actually me sitting there. I think it's 10 years back or something like that. It's more like this. Always meetings, a lot of people. A typical PC meeting. I told you it's 27 members, 13 associated in Norway, Switzerland, a number of countries. So we are around 40. Approximately 2 people from each country. That means that 75, 80 persons in the room, and in addition to that, the Commission. So, and if we have an agenda like this, around 10 items, you have 300 minutes, and the Commission answers all questions, so they consume half of the time. It means that every person in the room have 12 seconds. So, this is statistically. Luckily, a lot of people don't say anything. But it gives you a small flavor of what kind of meeting. You can't go to this meeting and just talk. You need to know what are we going to focus on, what are my priorities, and be prepared. That's one of the lessons. And preferably, don't only speak in these program committee meetings. You send in writing what you really want. And then you bring up the more pressures, because you want support from other members' countries if we are going to put the money in one or in another. So that's how it's done. But it's complicated, it's a lot of people, and it needs a firm hand to run it, actually, which is the Commission. Then you, of course, wonder, if I go to Brussels, do I invent what we are going to think and say myself? No, I don't. We always, I think every program, every member of a program committee that comes from Sweden has some kind of reference group in Sweden. I have one. It's around 25 persons. They have been handpicked by me and together with the delegate from the ministry. And I tried. NMP is very complicated. It's all from delivering drugs in hospitals to make parts to a bicycle or whatever, build a house and green car. So it's very complicated to have a full coverage of all different areas, to have experts. And of course, if we add people, have hundreds or 200s, but then it's very complicated to see the red thread of their response, because they will be a little bit difficult. So we have representatives from university, institute, industry, public authority, research council, actually. Try to cover all areas, but it is difficult. And these are the people which has committed themselves to help me, Sweden, to formulate an opinion, what we think, what is good for Sweden, what is good for Europe. Complicated, and it's like doing the military service. They don't get paid, they don't get anything. They hard work, you saw the work program. They have to read this 5 times, come up with ideas, preferably in writing, in English, understandable, and not one-eyed, as I say. If you are from a big company, you can't, that produce cellophone, you can't only speak about cell phones, because we don't have any use with people that only comes with their own priorities. They have to think a little bit broader. What they get for is that they can see the draft very, very early. They get, in December, they see the first draft. That's what actually make them do this job. Then I should be absolutely honest. They start very high level. After 3-4 times, the response level go down. That's the fact. It's complicated. It's a big job. Then we very polite change them with new people. That's the way we do it. So, some recommendations. I actually wrote some more recommendations listening to your... if possible, if you go on this first, if it's possible, contact or visit the scientific officer. I don't know if you like that, but it's, first-hand information is always first-hand information. No filter in between. I don't say that you should visit them 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. But if you have an idea, you are not certain that it exactly fits, then you can go down and discuss it. Of course, the scientific officer can never say, well, that will pass. Brilliant idea. He's not the one who's evaluating. That's external people. But he can tell you if it's in line with what they have been thinking. And I think that is very important. It's also very important to contact persons, national contact points. We have them in VINNOVA and there are some others. Katrin is one of them. She has a lot of experience and seen mistakes. She can tell about mistakes and you avoid them. She can probably not tell you how to write exactly to get it through, but she can give you some advice. And as I started out, don't forget potential impact. I think that is one of the things that we have been a bit it has been a weak point, if I express myself a bit cautiously. Start early. Don't start the week the closer of the. That is one. And read your orientation paper. The Commission nowadays they are tired of all this. Because the draft are published in different websites and you never know if it's the latest or if it's valid. And so what they have done, they have decided to publish a draft themselves and they call it orientation paper. And I think that is clever. And month, a little more than a month before the call. Yeah. So read it. Consortia. That is a very difficult and delicate recommendation because I made also last year in the summer when I was the only one working in VINNOVA. I looked at the success rate of different coordinators from different countries. And that is not totally unimportant. Pick your consortia very careful and also the coordinator. I think the coordinator have a crucial is a crucial person or crucial organization. That could be the difference between failure and success. I think that is very important. And you touched on a thing that is, Marie touched on a thing that is very important also. Write it simple, because the evaluator, you write in English mostly. You can write in other languages. And the evaluator, there are very few evaluators who has English as native language. Use a simple, but when I say simple, not simple and easy to understand language. I think that is important also, because understand who is going to read it and evaluate it. Don't make it too complicated. You can make your point without showing off, using a lot of words. Of course, there will always be one or two experts, but there are at least 3 who are reading the application. So you have to be think about that. That is one maybe final recommendation. And don't hesitate to apply. It's not that bad. And as always, if you're prepared, that's the key to success, I would say. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ulf. We're almost on time.
I saw that.
So, questions from the audience?
Hi, Marie-Claude Belin from Inventia. I'd like to know your recommendation about contacting the scientific officers for the call is an interesting one. How do I go about identifying who the scientific officer is?
Oh, it's always a way. If there is a will, there is a way. I used to say you can, for instance, contact the NCP and ask them who is, and if it's not decided, but I don't know where in this time scale you are elected as a scientific officer, but it's possible. If you look at the web, you actually have access to all people working in the commission. Then it's very difficult to understand exactly if he or she, but just call them or ask the NCP. It's possible. I have never failed it. I can always make 2 phone calls and find them. I can add one thing, because this in the beginning when I was started this work, I got a lot of phone calls, and they asked me they said that the commission was not handling their projects and things, a lot of things, and they wanted me to act as a member of the program committee. I'm a little bit more cautious. I have learned, and I burned my fingers, I can tell you. I would say that in 99 out of 100, the problem is in the applicant's knee, actually. I had an example just a month ago, no, before summer, a person that complained and said that we never conclude a contract. Well, I get new questions all the time from the commission. And soon the industry will skip the project. So I told him, okay, send me all the questions. I want to look what is the additional question you get from the commission. Then he sent me the questions. And I looked them through. It was 40, 50 questions. And it's exactly the same question we, VINNOVA, would have asked an applicant. Exactly the same. So I told him, well, so I'm a bit cautious to run the errand for misunderstood applicants. Yes, next.
Okay. Ylva Bäcklund from Uppsala University.
Yeah.
I would like to hear you comment on the process of evaluating the PPPs. I understand from you that they're not different. The process is not different from normal.
No, the same process.
So
there is a one stage on the PPP, because why we had a lot of discussion. Now we're going to have 2 stages, 1 stage, because the industry originally they want 1 stage because the cost of 2 stage, want 2 stage because the cost of failure in 1 stage is so high. But in this case, when they want the impact of the work or of the work program, the impact of the project faster, they preferred the 1 stage approach, and otherwise it's exactly the same approach as the 1 stage in the whole program.
So the industry group influences the work program, but never the
No, not the evaluation. The evaluation is the same, exactly the same procedures. There is a database with too few Swedes that are picked as evaluators. And we also get the statistics of that, so I can guarantee the Swedish participation as evaluator are too low. We don't fill our quote. So if someone wants to sign up, do it. Yes.
So I guess we have time for one last question. Okay, if not, I would like to bring all the speakers again to the floor here. Marie Sjöberg and Dr. John Vega-Benes, and I will give you a small present. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. So, thank you, Marie. Yes. We will finish off with coffee now. Coffee is served outside. During coffee, I will put up a list as well on this door where you can sign up for an individual discussion. And we will have Dr. John Vega-Benes here for the whole evening. So I hope that you take this opportunity. His flight is not until 8 o'clock this evening, so no, but I think you want to go home as well. But then myself and Anders Marén will also be available for discussion if you like. And you can also send us an email afterwards if you don't have time at the moment. That is valid also for our web viewers. So feel free to contact any of us from VINNOVA and we will respond to you as soon as possible. So thank you for your patience, and coffee is served outside.